Welcome to the Don't Pick the Scab podcast with the premise of connecting men over 40 with the tools and community to thrive in their divorce recovery either before, during, or after a divorce. Welcome, everybody out there to Don't Pick the Scab podcast, episode 36. Welcome, Sara, Khaki, to the show. It is Khaki, correct? I never asked you that.
Yes, thanks for having me, David.
All right. Sara Khaki on the show. She's a founding member of the Atlanta Divorce Law Group. Sara has numerous awards and accolades. Just suffice to say, she is a kick-ass family law attorney. There we go. So my first question is, what drew you to law when you were younger, and why family law? What was your segue?
David, I am of Iranian descent. I was born in Iran, and my family escaped Iran when I was a baby, and I was 3 years old, and we took refuge in Sweden. And I then left Sweden when I was 13 years old and came to the United States as a middle schooler, and very quickly fell in love with the U.S. Constitution. This is the third continent I've lived in. I've been to many different countries. I consider myself a international citizen at this point, but I've never seen anything as beautiful as the Constitution. And I fell in love with it the minute I got to study it as early as I was exposed to American history in middle school, and knew even when I tried, as hard as I tried to be a doctor, just like every good Persian girl is supposed to be, I had to go to the next best thing. Or I think if you have any Middle Eastern listeners, they can relate that we have one mission in life from our parents: doctor, lawyer, engineer, and it's pretty much in that order. So I took the next one.
Seriously, nobody wants to be a dentist? Thanks.
Sorry, David. No, I can't even go to the dentist. I can't even go to the dentist. I don't know what's worse, going to the dentist or a lawyer's office.
Anyways, yes. So how did you pick family law of all the?
So when I was in my summers, when I was in law school, I would intern for a family law firm and loved it. But I didn't come out straight to family law. I first started doing Social Security disability. And I enjoyed it, but not as much as I had enjoyed doing the family law work I was doing when I was a summer intern as a law student. And I knew I had to work with people. That was always the thing. I knew I wanted to get results through people and be involved in people's lives and feel like I'm making a difference in people's lives. I'm one of those cliche lawyers that read John Grisham and thought I was going to go change the world with the U.S. Constitution. Yes, exactly. So I knew it had to be with people. And I come from a very large family, like I call it my big fat Persian family. And what drew me to family law was it is all the things that makes family so wonderful, but also so messy and so emotional. And I love the part of it that at the end of the day, family law is a real view of what humans are like. We're messy people. There's no black and whites. We make messes. We can have the best intentions. There is nothing that you can just look at somebody and say, oh, I know 100% what I'm getting here. And no family law is ever the same, because it's all about humans and their emotions. I always tell our clients this: as much as we would love for divorce cases to be transactional, what doesn't make them transactional is all the human elements, all the psychology, all the reasons why one person has resentment and is not using just straight calculations and deciding what they want out of it. There's always a backstory behind the numbers. And I think that's all fascinating. And I'm just a fan of family. I'm a loyal person through and through, and I love helping people who have done everything they can to fight for their family. And in their gut, they feel that they have to make another hard decision now. And I want them to find a legal team that helps them feel like they're making the right decision. They can look themselves 5 years down the line and say, you know what? I did everything I could, all the way down to picking my attorney.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What are some of the family values you grew up with that translates into your law practice for you practicing law?
Yeah, it's such a great question. Okay, self-responsibility is a big one. I always laugh because I'm one of those moms that my kid comes home with a bruise or something. Inside, I'm like, who touched you? I want to kill him. because I'm just like, nobody touches my child. But then my mom voice comes in my head. Just my mom never sided with me on anything. So if I went to my mom and I said, hey, so-and-so was mean to me, she said, what did you do? And that is a huge, I think, value that she placed in me, because I think it is our job as advocates for our clients, no matter how loyal we are to our clients, no matter how much we want to fight for them, the best thing we can also do for them is to show them, what is the other story the other person's telling? What are they going home telling their mom? What are they going home and going to their lawyer's office, telling their lawyer's office? And if we only give our clients advocating for them to just get clear on their story and never giving them chance to say, do you see why the psychology on the other end is going to drive this a different direction if we're not ahead of it? I think that part is very important, and a lot of self-responsibility, because the ultimate freedom from this comes from self-responsibility, and otherwise you are going to be a victim to the circumstances for the rest of your life.
Wow. Let's talk about the N word, narcissism. That was pretty cool. It was called something else before, but just in the past couple of years, narcissism has grown exponentially in the court system and the psychology system. How does that play a part with some of your decisions or how you approach a case?
I have to tell you, when the word narcissist started taking a hold years back, I thought it was just another buzzword. There's a lot of buzzwords. There's a lot of psychological buzzwords going around. And I don't know if it's age or experience or just having talked to so many people. It's real, David. Like, it is 100% real. I wish it wasn't. I wish it was in our heads. And I come from such a loving, sheltered family that it was hard for me to accept that this is a real thing. And one of the things I do when I have a consult with a client and they're telling me they're in an abusive situation, I really want to find out, what do they mean by abuse? Because every marriage is going to have fights, and people have different definitions of what's fair in a fight and what can be said in a fight and how you move past it. But when I learn a little bit more about, why do you think you're in an abusive situation, and they start giving me examples, I can start seeing the pattern. And there is a pattern that you can diagnose. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I can't diagnose anybody as a narcissist, but I can tell you when I see the narcissistic traits. I can see when somebody is not willing to take any accountability in the relationship. And sometimes we both know this, in any relationship in life, friendship, partnership, whatever, it's not always going to be 50-50. Sometimes one person has to carry 90, the other person has to carry 10. But when you have a situation where the other person has no accountability, no percentage whatsoever, they're either always there's two identities that's always coming into play. They're either the charming person that everybody likes and they get to wrap their identity and all the greatness about them and their status, or it's the victim. So those are the two faces. And then there's no empathy. Everything is, there's no self-awareness. And you can quickly, when you poke at it enough and you ask enough questions, you can see when somebody has no self-awareness, versus when you have a client that's sitting there and saying, this is what my part in this was. I haven't been an angel either. Here's all the things I've done wrong. Here's the things I wish I'd done better. Here's all the ways I wish we could have gone to therapy or we could have worked on it, versus a person that's just completely a victim, has no accountability for it at all. And they're playing mind games and controlling games. And it's absolutely real. Do I think the word gets overused? 100%. But that doesn't mitigate the fact that there's a lot of people that are isolated and living in the dark with narcissists, and they could be our neighbors and we don't know, because narcissists are not that easily identifiable to the naked eye. You have to spend some time with them. You have to almost corner them and put them in a spot where their identity is attacked a little bit till you see it.
Wow, very interesting. So let's do another buzzword, since some buzzwords. Parental alienation.
Oh, man.
We're on a roll, baby.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, give it to me, Sarah.
All right. So I think parental alienation has a fine line, a slippery slope between I am protecting my child. I am a parent first. I am going to put my child first versus parental alienation. And I think that when you are in a high conflict divorce or relationship, it is a really hard line to walk, because I can't speak for the entire country, but I can speak for the state I have a bar licenses, which is in Georgia. When we have somebody who is tiptoeing the line between, oh, I'm going to give you, I'm going to buy the kids all these things, but not give you any child support, right? Or I'm always going to show up a little bit late, or here's my new boyfriend, all those things. And it's just, they're just tiptoeing the line, and they're triggering the other person. That other person cannot start just keeping the child away from the other parent. It could be considered parental alienation. And if they're with somebody that is not co-parenting with them in a positive way, then it becomes a real problem. So I think you have ranges of parental alienation. I think you have the one that, to your point, it's a buzzword, and it could be a parent that is truly at their wits' end, trying to use the system, and the system's not perfect, we know this, as much as possible, and alarm the system. And the system keeps saying, hasn't gotten bad enough. They haven't done enough bad things. You got to play, like, you got to let them fail more. But you want them to keep failing on my child, on my watch? That's really hard pill to swallow. It's really hard for me to tell a client, I'm so sorry, but you're going to have to go drop your children off with her, when you know that most likely her boyfriend might come over the whole time. And we have all these safety measures, but they're not perfect. None of them are perfect.
Right.
So there's that. And then there's just straight up crazy, right? Just bad talking dad. and that's the other range, just bad talking dad, telling the children about the reasons for the divorce, or why mom walked out on you, or just telling the children lies and making the children hate the other parent. So I think you have a range of it. And I think the word gets used a lot by both sides, the crazy people, and also sometimes it gets overused when people are really just trying to find a way to protect their children. At the end of the day, I think you really got to know the circumstances, and you have to do everything to show that you've mitigated and you've communicated. But I always tell clients, you know what? There's a legal system, and then there's you as a parent. And I will never stand in the way between a client and their parental instinct.
Wow. Wow. I got that passion going, man, with 2 questions. Oh, man, that was pretty interesting. So rebuilding the confidence after divorce. I know you're not a therapist, this, any other. How do you not try to therapize, which is not a verb, by the way, therapize clients? How do you hold that back?
I have personally done a lot of personal development and coaching. And I haven't done any therapy, just full transparency. I advise therapy for all of our clients because I've seen the results in our clients with therapy. But I haven't been through any therapy myself, but I've gone through thousands of dollars in personal development work and coaching. And I do consider myself that one of the hats I wear is a coach to our clients. I'm not advertising myself or marketing myself or have a package up to sell as a divorce coach, but I do think that what sets our team apart is that, as the founder of the firm, I'm evangelizing the rest of the team on how to challenge the mindset of our clients.
Interesting. Wow. What about something different? 2 things: grandparents' rights and pet custody. How do you, those are 2 that are so foreign to me at this point, but it's very common lately.
Yeah, and I think I'm a big fan of grandparents' rights, because not when they are causing more harm than good and getting and they're overstepping boundaries. But in almost every case we've dealt with grandparents' rights, this has been grandparents who would want nothing more than for their own child or for the other parent to step up and be the right parent. But when you see your own flesh and blood, or even your adoptive grandchildren, being hurt, and you're just seeing children getting hurt, I admire the grandparents that take their retirement money and their retirement time and go spend it on attorneys like us to go and fight the system to get custody. And we're talking about grandparents who were retired and coming out of retirement to go work so that they can now become parents who should have the energy of 30 and 40-year-olds. I've seen more good than bad in grandparents. Of course, I think there's always the outlier situation. But if you take the bell curve, which is the reasonable person, which is what the system always wants to, any law you look at wants to evaluate the reasonable person. Would the reasonable person want in their 60s or 70s come in and spend their time that was supposed to be meant for retirement and their money that's supposed to be their nest egg on going through a court battle to protect their grandchildren, and now have to go through soccer practices, do work, stay up late and do homework and prepare lunches? I don't think the bell curve reasonable person would like to do that. So I do think grandparents' rights is not to be taken lightly. And I do have deep respect for grandparents who step up and look at a situation that's dysfunctional and want to do everything they can to protect the children.
What about pets?
All right, David, I'm going to ask you, what happened with you and your pets?
Absolutely nothing, believe it or not.
Is there a story there? You have two types of people. You have the people who like people more, and then you have the people who like animals more. And to me, it depends on the pet or the animal or the human, which one I would prefer.
Have you seen the tug of war?
I have. And I have seen people that actually delay getting divorced because of it. Not that many, but if it is your child, if you really think of your pet as your child, but the court system treats it as property and that is difficult. There have been many cases we've seen, though, where they actually come up with their own arrangement where they share the custody of the pet, but nothing that the court's really going to uphold. It's again, I think it's an outlier situation. Most reasonable people that we deal with understand that, okay, if the other person was the one who was the main caretaker for the dog, maybe he or she should have the dog. I'm going to miss the dog. In any home, usually there is that one person that's the alpha person for the animal. And when push comes to shove and you've had enough and you want to be divorced bad enough, believe me, David, you'll walk away from the pet.
Walk away from that dog. Sorry. In the state of Georgia, have you seen, most states, I think, are they swaying more toward a 50-50 co-parenting time? Because I remember back in the day, because I'm older than you, just a couple of years.
Just a couple of years.
There was a movie called Kramer versus Kramer.
Yes.
And, they did the 80-20 every other weekend. And I was like, man, I'm not an every other weekend father.
Man, that movie is heart-wrenching.
Oh, yeah.
Heart-wrenching.
It is. And I offered 50%, and we did 50%, and I loved it, and it was a great time. And now my kids are grown, and they survived. But people don't realize that kids are more resilient than they think.
100%.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Yeah, 50-50 became very trendy about 10 years ago, and not all the counties in Georgia, and each county has judges that feel a different way about it. Not all the counties in Georgia went above and beyond with it, but some of the main counties here in area I'm in, the Atlanta metropolitan area, like Fulton, DeKalb, they are a little bit more progressive. They like to do newer, cooler, or different things. So 50-50 became very trendy with them. But there's also a lot of studies that have come out now that say it actually turns out to be a lot of parallel parenting, because 50-50 at its heart is supposed to be a lot of collaboration, a lot of communication, still partnering together in the care for the children. And it's an ideal thing. And I think a lot of people have been able to do it successfully and have written about it and talked about it, but I don't think everybody pulls it off as well. So I think that it's one of those things that you really have to be honest with yourselves and say, can we partner up in parenting together? And sometimes it's hard to say that when you're in the heat of divorce. There are people that don't have a pleasant divorce, but once the pain wears off and they've grieved it and they're over it, they're able to put that aside and go into partner up with each other on co-parenting, and that might take some time. So personally, I like to really know when somebody tells me 50-50, why do you want 50-50? Is it because it's the new trend you've heard about and all the neighbors are talking about it? And I understand two perspectives. I think that you have to, Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about
Yeah.
that. Could it be the child support issue? Because there's two perspectives I have come across. One is the woman who would be ashamed to ever say she wants anything less than 50-50 custody, but she doesn't really want 50-50 or more. But she is, it's a cultural, societal thing
Mhm.
that women are supposed to want their kids. But just because you're a mother doesn't make you a good one. And just because you're a woman doesn't make you a natural caregiver, right? But I think that we have this expectation that even though we're supposed to be away from the law is supposed to be gender neutral, it's humans applying this law, and we're talking about humans are messy, and we have all this psychology and all the societal patterns and rules inside of us. So I think sometimes you're not getting the honest truth from the mother in the picture on what do you really want. You haven't been, he's been the primary caretaker, he's the one working from home, you're traveling all the time, you are out on the weekends building business, whatever, it doesn't matter. But is this really what you want, versus do you feel compelled to say that because it feels shameful to admit that you want less? I think you also have the other side, which is for the father. I think there's a huge expectation of our society now that fathers need to step it up. And there's this thing such as 50-50, whereas before 50-50 became trendy, I think men had an easier time accepting the fact that, okay, I guess she'll be the primary caretaker
Mhm.
and I'll have visitation. And even though in their heart they wanted more, they weren't saying that. But I think now that we have this 50-50 option, men also feel this sort of weight to say, I guess I should be asking for 50-50. And could it be because of the child support? Because neither party wants to pay for the child support. But in Georgia, the state has an interest in child support. That
Mhm.
all matters of the child, it's not just between the parents. The state has an interest as well. So you have to satisfy the state's interest too through the child custody arrangement and the child support arrangement. So just because you have 50-50 in Georgia doesn't mean you get away from child support. Long story short, David, 50-50, I think it's a beautiful, ideal state that allows children to have a significant relationship with both parents. But if it sets the child up for disappointment, if it
Mhm.
sets the child up for being ping ponged between two homes, we're better off doing something more old fashioned.
Different. Okay. What about the multicultural family divorce? That's got to be interesting. What have you dealt with that? That puts some different nuances into it.
Some of the things I see is when we have somebody who is married to an immigrant, like myself, who has a lot of family abroad. And now that they're divorced, they have expectations of, I'm going to want to go across seas with my children, travel with the children to my homeland. That can be a tense situation, especially if you're in a conflict with this person you're getting through the divorce, and now they want to travel with your child to another country, and if you have any concerns that they're not going to come back with the child. So that's a huge multicultural issue we face.
Mhm.
The other one is the religious stuff. We have seen where a divorce happens, one parent all of a sudden becomes very involved in a congregation of any spiritual practice and brings a child into it, and the other parent is freaking out because the child is coming back with a completely different behavioral issues. So that's some issues we see with the religious aspects. Multicultural, I'll tell you, you have living in being a family law firm in the metropolitan Atlanta area, which is I believe we have a diverse city. You have to be aware of some of the major factors and some of the big cultures we have here. For instance, you need to know what a dowry is. A lot of countries like Iran, India, a
Mhm.
lot of these countries have something called a dowry, which is like a down payment you put down at the time of marriage, so that in case of divorce, one person has to hand it over to the other. And sometimes those things are negotiated in the divorce here in America, but you got to know these factors. The other thing you need to understand is that some other cultures, the whole family gets involved in the divorce. And that's very common in some of the Indian divorces that we handle. We literally have to have both sides of the family that want to be involved in mediating it. So we have to set some
Oh.
expectations of, what does this process look like for the court system? Court system may not listen to both sides. We've had Indian couples before that are like, can we please help us get divorced and get through the finish line and keep it super private, because we want to be done and then tell our families. Otherwise, our families are going to have a meeting
Yep.
and tell us what to do. So I do think that there's obviously, you don't want to stereotype anything because you never know, right? Like I moved to this country with looking like a Middle Eastern, but with a Swedish accent, wearing European clothes. So nobody could stereotype me into anything. They had no clue what they were dealing with. So you never know what a person's full background is. But I do think understanding the cultural significance of their heritage, and if what that will do to the psychology of the case, and how hard is this pill of divorce for them to swallow because of their cultural background and their heritage, and helping them through that. And I'll be frank with you, if there's a way to leverage that in the opposing party, like for instance, hey, he does not want anybody to know that he's going through a divorce because in his culture or his religion or his family's religion, this is super shameful. Okay, can we leverage that to get a settlement agreement and get this thing done and get some of the things we want negotiated quickly? Because his pain point is privacy and protecting his cultural identity. We can give that to him in a silver platter if he's willing to give us X, Y, and Z in a silver platter.
Yep. Wow. Sarah, you're knocking the socks off. How can, and I saw this too on your website or somewhere, how can social media be used in family court? What's a good general example of that?
We have all social media posts, even if they're old, if there's a screenshot of them, we can use them as evidence here in our state, in Georgia. And so you can submit all of that. Now, let's say, David, that we have a client, a female client, that's saying that she's not earning any money. She has no income. She can't support herself, and she needs X amount of child support because of it. And she needs this much alimony because of it. And we go on social media and look her up, and we see pictures of her with extravagant travel, pictures of her and showing off that she's shopping, pictures of herself doing luxurious things that don't look like any kind of necessity, or maybe bragging about a new deal she just closed. We're going to use that.
Interesting. Wow. I just learned something, man. Stay off social media.
Stay off social media. And that is a bit of an extreme example. What usually happens is not that black and white. What usually happens is she still might have access to your social media. You don't even know about it. And she's watching you message with other people and flirting. And even though it might not do anything in your state because you're a no-fault state, and the flirtation you're engaging in doesn't have any legal standing, but guess what? You just fueled the fire of somebody who is now going to find reasons to trigger you and pick at you and make this more costly and drag it out, not for rational reasons, but because what she saw, she wants to punish you for it.
Wow. All right, Sarah. The last question. You got 3 people, and you can tell these 3 people, tell each person one thing. What are the 3 most important things you want to tell men out there over 40 going through a divorce? What are the 3?
Okay, so this is to tell men over 40 going through a divorce?
Yes.
All right, here's the first one.
All right.
Don't get engaged right after.
I didn't see that one coming.
You said it was going to be fun.
How much time? What's the timeline?
So I believe statistically speaking, men get engaged within 18 months after getting divorced.
That's massive.
Yeah. So that's one.
Okay.
2, even if the kids are shunning you out and are putting all the blame on you, don't stop fighting for them, because they will come to an age where they will see clearly for themselves and will realize that, man, dad fought for me. No matter what, dad didn't give up on me. And you want to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, I never stopped fighting for them. I am promising you I know when they're teenagers, it's really hard.
Yeah.
And I know that they're going to be connected to their caretaker if it's the mom, and you feel that you've been basically taken out of the picture. But don't stop in any shape or form. Do not stop fighting for them, because even if you don't get to have that relationship with them as a minor, when they're an adult, 9 out of 10 times they will go through therapy and talk about their parents' divorce to a therapist, and they will start pulling the threads apart and realizing, man, dad actually never really gave up on me. Dad actually did not
That is
abandon me.
huge. And number 3?
Man, I thought 2 was so good. I gave you 2 in 1, man. All right, hold on. Number 3. Hold on. I got it in me.
Edit.
No, I think number 3 is, you should not use the divorce process to throw away your future because you're buying your guilt away. And I see this a lot in men. If there is something in the marriage that they feel guilty about, whether I worked too much and I didn't take care of her enough, I wasn't there for her enough, or I had a flirtation with somebody else, or there was infidelity, or I wasn't involved enough, or I should have stood up to her and said no when she was about to make that really dumb decision. If there is something in the marriage that you take responsibility for being the breakdown of your marriage, the answer isn't throwing all your life savings, all of your life's work financially on that guilt to make it go away. And you come out of the divorce in a terrible situation where you can't take care of yourself or your children because you were hoping that if you just give her beyond what is fair, you can crush this guilt you feel inside. Take therapy for that, but you still know in your heart, financially, you're still responsible for your children and you are responsible for you. So don't flush it all down the drain because there's guilt talking.
Don't fall into the guilt. Wow. Sara, I want to thank you. This has been awesome. This is way better than I thought it'd be, because you never know going through a podcast, as we said before. Let the listeners out there know where to find you, your website,
Yes.
all that good stuff.
So you can find us on atlantadivorcelawgroup.com. And we also have a podcast, the Happily Ever After Divorce podcast. And guess what? We're coming out with a Narcissist book as well. So yes, if you follow us in Atlanta Divorce Law Group, you'll get all the latest news on us, and we can be of any service. We'd be glad to.
We want to thank you. We're going to have all those contacts in the bottom of the show notes, but we want to thank Sara for taking time and hanging out with us. And this was definitely worth waiting after work for this. I really appreciate it, Sara.
It was my pleasure. Same.
Yeah. So you take care and have a nice night. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.